Language is the medium we have, but we also know that words have baggage and meaning, and there's nuances with language. It's complicated, just like people are complicated. You can understand a lot about where people are coming from if you ask them questions about how they see other people in the world. And what we know is that our perceptions of how we view our own behavior, we see a big problem here. I would hope that the Birkman could be that mirror to say it's reflecting back the essence of who you were truly created to be, that vital need we all have to relate to others and be connected on a human level. Humans are created to be together and work together and live together. When you ask them, what's your biggest problem with your team or your people or whatever, they always say, communication. Well, you know what? That's understandable. And here's why.
In today's episode of the Chris Senise Podcast, I'm joined by Sharon Birkman, former CEO and now board chair of Birkman International. Sharon has spent decades carrying forward the pioneering work of her father, Dr. Roger Birkman, who first developed the Birkman Method in the 1950s. The Birkman Method is one of the most trusted behavioral and personality assessments in the world, used by leading businesses to develop high-performance teams, sports teams, agencies, and organizations to improve communication and unlock potential. Sharon shares her unique journey with me about stepping into leadership within a family-founded company and what it's been like to steward a legacy while also making it her own. We dive into how the Birkman continues to evolve, why uncovering our hidden needs is key to healthier relationships, and the ways self-awareness can shift how we work and live. This is a thoughtful and inspiring conversation with someone dedicated to helping people understand themselves and each other in deeper, more meaningful, and even spiritual ways. So listen. Thanks for your interest in sticking around to watch or listen to my podcast, dedicated to providing tools and resources to help you claim and live your best life. If you're loving these conversations, make sure you hit that bell to subscribe or follow and never miss an episode of the Chris Senise Podcast. Don't forget to tap the like and share it with someone who needs a little inspiration today. Let's grow this community of curious, driven minds together. Do you want to tell us the story in how the questions were simplified and how your 7-year-old sister was involved in that? I think that's such a great story.
Oh, okay. Well, years ago, my dad was working with a brilliant statistician, Dr. Roy Mefford. And at that point, they were beginning to do the first translations, and that, of course, logically would be Spanish, because we're right near, the Central and South America, and of course, Mexico.
Okay.
And so we realized that, but the questionnaire itself it's a delicate matter to translate successfully the items, they call it. Each question is called an item on the questionnaire, because you're trying. I mean, let's say language is the medium we have. That's how humans communicate. Right. But we also know that words have baggage and meaning, and there's nuances with language. It's complicated, just like people are complicated. So that said, there was great pains taken to make sure that it was the translation that we were going for was accurately reflecting what it was meant to measure in terms of human behaviors and human motivations, because that's what Birkman's all about, is understanding at that deeper level how we see self and others in a more accurate and appreciative way. All right, so back to how it started. So I was a middle schooler, and my sister, who was quite a bit younger at the time, was like a first, second grader, and we looked at the questionnaire, and the questionnaire, when it was developed in right after the Second World War in the late 40s, early 50s, it was geared to the working adult population. So it was presumed you were at least over 18 or 21, and you were in the workforce, and there were normal idioms of American language at the time, in English, and they realized that some of these things could be misinterpreted if they were translated literally into another language. Yes. So the idea was, how can we make it as straightforward, simple, and basic as humanly possible? And so my dad
Mm-hmm.
has this brilliant idea. He sits down with my little sister, and he plays the penny game. And the penny game was, if she had trouble with a word, like for example, I have felt down, or melancholy was the word, for several days at a time. And the
Okay.
melancholy obviously is a 50-cent word. It's a multi-syllable word. But if he changed that to, I have felt sad in my head for sometimes for days at a time, that was
Okay.
easy for her. She could, even as a young child, could grasp that. And so what then Dr. Mefford, the researcher, the statistician, said, Roger, you know
Right.
what? For a while they used the so-called adult form and the basic, more simplified, we didn't say child version because that was not really true, but the simplified version. Um,
Right.
and they existed side by side, but the simplified one was almost never used. It was still
Right.
mostly the adult one. But when they got ready to translate, Medford said, you know what? It's going to be much easier to do a good translation with the simpler one than it is with the standard one with all the idioms and figures of speech in it. So
Mm-hmm.
let's just use that for everything. And that became the norm. And they just did away with the original, some of the original. Now, the items or the questions, again, were still very, very carefully aimed at getting the same kind of information. But
Mm-hmm.
we now know that, we say to the public, if a person has even a basic third or fourth or fifth grade reading level, they could take the Berkman, but we don't want them to. It's too young because what it's
Right.
seeking to measure is more the social awareness it starts to develop after middle school.
Mm-hmm.
So we prefer
Right.
them, the older the better, if you want to be really
Mm-hmm.
accurate. But even to
Oh,
be in compliance with our policy now, you're supposed to be at least 16.
okay. And if I understood it correctly, when it was originally explained to me,
Mm-hmm.
when you take this at 16, because I did hear that,
Uh-huh.
it doesn't really change after that. Is that correct?
Okay, I'm going to put a caveat on that.
Okay.
Here's,
Okay.
let me circle back to the premise of the Berkman and why
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
there are parts that are adaptable and there are parts that stay very steady. And I'm going to define that for
Gotcha.
you. The
Okay.
idea behind the Berkman was that you can understand a lot about where people are coming from in their perceptions if you ask
Uh-huh.
them questions about how they see other people in the world. And if you they in the early research after he came back from the Second World War and was working on his master's and in social psychology, they called it
Mm-hmm.
IO, industrial organizational psychology at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So he was with a lot of, the GI Bill was bringing those soldiers home and they were off to the races. And there was a lot of energy around this brand new discipline called taking psychology to the workplace because it wasn't really
Okay.
done much. It was talked about earlier on, but not really implemented until after World War II. Now it's pretty
Okay.
well known, but it wasn't then. And so he
Right.
said, you know what? I think if I just had a questionnaire based on my
Mm-hmm.
research where I asked people to describe how they see most people, that I would
Mm-hmm.
get all the valuable information I need. And yet, as they were working through that, several of the co-workers said, "Why don't you ask people the same questions about themselves?" And Dad thought, that's a good idea. So let's try that. So they started saying, I see myself this way. I see my colleagues or the people generally in the world in a very broad way. Most people are like that. And when they put the two together, they realized they had found an excellent way to understand how we see both self and others in a more accurate
Mm-hmm.
way. Now, what that
Okay.
tells us then, and what we know, is that our perceptions of how we view our own behavior, we can
Okay.
make adjustments in that as we need to adapt to certain jobs or social situations or careers, or,
Mm-hmm.
we say we, as humans, we're hardwired to need to connect with others. Topic of my Creatures of Contact book.
Mm-hmm.
As humans, we need one another and we're interdependent in a wonderful way. That's the
Okay.
team. The people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't love numerical. on the Birkman, but it's very, very important in business. So I
Yes.
love the fact that I can work with people that do love working with numbers, and they provide an incredibly important service to make our team what it is. And that's going to be true in
Yes.
every organization. Okay, so now we've got this thing that Birkman calls our usual, how we see ourselves, how do we show up in the best possible way to interact with other people, to get the job done. And that usual behavior is always socially desirable, and we see it like strengths-based behavior because that's what
Right.
it is. And yet we also know there's a complexity to humans, including you and me and all of us, and that is what is the interior self, the hardwire, God, I would say God, divinely, the creator that gave us,
Yes.
that made us who we are from that first cry at birth, from that first breath. We came preloaded, pre-wired with certain traits and certain interests. And that's for a very, very good reason, because that's how civilization works. Nobody has them all, but everybody has some. And so
Right.
what he realized is, and later they did add the interest in to understand the motivations toward what do I like to do. So we've got those three levels. How do I see myself? How do I see others? And what do I love to do? If pay were not even a factor, what brings me joy? What lights me up?
Yes.
Okay, so that
Right.
said, now you got a three-dimensional view of a human being. And
Right.
and from that, your question though, to circle back to what changes, what doesn't. Here's what we
Right.
have found over our decades of research. As humans, we have a certain ability. The brain, we know now for a fact, has neuroplasticity, meaning the
Yes.
brain can be, in many. That's what coaching's all about. And Chris, if we didn't believe coaching was valuable, we might as well just hang up our shingle and go home and forget it, because
Yeah.
why are we here? At the
Right.
same time, we also want, this is really important, we want
Mm-hmm.
people to recognize and appreciate and honor the hardwired traits they were born with. Now, here's where it gets interesting. I'm
Yes.
going to take what you have on your report is called the need for acceptance. It's from groups, and that's what we now call social energy. We changed the name back to its sociableness was the original name of that component of that trait.
Right.
Here's what we know about humans, and this is so fun,
Yes.
that we can be a both and. We're not an either or. By that I mean you can have high usual. I can be very, very social and really enjoy meeting with groups of people and going to my teams. When I go to Starbucks and do my work, I get energy from the crowd, etc. And by the way, I also need my independent time alone. That's my normal way to be, and it's just fine. So
Right.
if you translate that into a different way to look at it, I can be an extrovert looking person all day long, and when I go
Yes.
home, I really need to breathe. I need to just be with one person or alone, but
Yes.
one person that I feel very secure, comfortable with, selectively social, we say. And that's
Right.
also extremely normal. And so
Right.
that's how we don't like to put anybody into a box that labels them an extrovert, introvert, because most of us are a combination at some level or the other, at one
Right.
intensity or another. Now, if you answer our Birkman method with questions that show you supremely high during the day and supremely low at night, well, if you think about it, that means it takes me a while to get my energy batteries recharged and be ready to be with people again. But if it's a small gap, that means, well, I need a little time, but not that much. So,
Right.
but the point is just to honor whatever your particular battery charging need happens to be, and
Right.
what we call this combination. Now we have 9 components. When you took it, it was 11, but
Yes.
here's something fun to know. We took 10 of those. They were attitudes, actually. They were kind of forced into the component label, and so that's why we need to get you updated. It changed
Oh.
because the attitudes then were broken out and nuanced into a whole new report called the mindset report, which is even
Yes.
more intricate and more nuanced than
Right.
than the original preview could be that you had back in
Right.
14. So, but now these 9 components really are the bone structure of what makes Birkman unique among assessments. It's
Mm-hmm.
how we get motivated on these deeper levels. So the
Right.
metaphor I love to use because it's so easy is to say
Uh-huh.
the way we show up in our as we come to work, as we interact with our friends and family, as
Mm-hmm.
be with other people. That is like the tree from the ground up. So,
Right.
in Florida, I don't know all the different kinds of palms, but I know you have beautiful palms. And so
Yes.
I can tell the difference between a palm and an oak pretty easy. It's obvious. Walk up and
Yes.
you just see it. You see it. That's
Right.
our usual
Right.
behavior. That's how we choose to be. And that can change a little, doesn't tend to change dramatically, but what we tell people is unless a Berkman score or percentage pops, which it almost never does. If it changes more than 25 percentiles from between 1 and 99 is our spectrum. But if it goes
Mm-hmm.
bigger than 25, well, that's a notable change that we probably
Mm-hmm.
about what happened. Maybe a big life event or something, or maybe that's something the coach would just like to explore. But
Right.
majority of the time, it only changes a smidge. Usual
Right.
behavior, which is adaptable. Now, if you go
Right.
to the interior needs, that part of us that we were born with, that our parents knew they didn't necessarily order, but that's what they got with you.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that.
and that's good because that these are the gifts we're born to utilize,
Sure.
and
Mm-hmm.
those almost never change at all. The interests stay very much the same, and very much in the same high-low ranges,
Okay.
and
Okay.
even the interior needs that we call them, which are the roots of the tree, not the part you
Right.
see, but the part that's keeping the tree alive. That
Right.
doesn't change, or
Right.
almost never. If a person has taken it sincerely and not
Mm-hmm.
tried in any way to game it, or blow it
Right.
off, which
Mm-hmm.
doesn't happen often, because then it's no
Yeah.
good. It's no good to them, in fact. But most people will
Yeah.
take it sincerely and seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do, they will take it again, maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years later and go, huh, it hardly changed at all. Or if it did,
Wow.
I understand why I was adapting to something at that moment in time. Or to now, what does change, hopefully,
Mm-hmm.
is
Yeah.
self-awareness and EQ, emotional intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
as we mature, our goal is to do a better and better job of being who we are and being our very,
Yeah.
very best selves, no matter what
Yeah.
circumstances.
Yeah.
Now, there's another little caveat, though. You mentioned it earlier, and that is we all have our difficult days. And so Berkman
Yes.
says, hey, you know what? No exceptions. Every single trait we have can flip on us on a difficult day. It's like we don't want sunshine all the time. We need rain. Sometimes we
Right.
need rain. And we need those
Mm-hmm.
difficult days to learn from. And when that
Right.
happens, that's when the awareness can turn into better self-care and self-management. Because that's
Right.
when we say, okay, what is the Berkman? How do I recharge on the Berkman? And because everyone does it a little differently. And
Mm-hmm.
managing
Mm-hmm.
that stress, we don't want to live in stress because then
Right.
we're, who sees the stress most is our dearest friends and family. They're
Yes.
the ones who have to
Those
live with us
closest to
when we're
us.
in a bad mood.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we try to not inflict that on our colleagues at work, but
Right.
when we feel it, our loved ones feel it. And so
Mm-hmm.
the Berkman says, okay, how can I help you get quicker out of that stressful mode and honor your
Mm-hmm.
needs and get you back into your happier, more productive feelings about yourself and how you're getting through
Right.
life.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, you mentioned the acceptance part, and what's interesting. I'll tell you what really got to, I think where I was the most impressed with the Berkman right away was that I was 97 musical and 97 numerical. You
Well, yes,
know,
you
I
are.
am.
Yes, you are. I've got your numbers in front of me now. Yeah.
Yeah, so I am a musician. I'm a songwriter. I'm a
Uh-huh.
musician, and then I am a CFO. I run my own practice now, and a lot of times in my past that felt like it was like it conflicted, right?
Mhm.
Because I would even be told by people, it's like, if in my finance world, it'd be like, what? Like, you're a musician? That kind of doesn't make sense. You're so like, you know. And then musicians would tell me, you're an accountant. I'd be like, yeah, I am. But going back to the reason I mentioned that is because with acceptance, there is this level of being extroverted as a musician, right? So I'm 92 there on my usual, but let me tell you, I need to come back and like be under the covers for 2 days after a show
Yeah, you
because
do. You
there is
do. I'm
just,
looking at your social energy. Yeah, it's very high
yeah,
usual, but a lower need. Now, as far as the interest, there is no conflict at all between music
yeah,
and numerical. In fact,
yeah.
do you know how many artists and musicians wish they had a day job? They could be a CFO or be an accountant or a CPA.
Yeah, well, I know
Yeah,
that,
you
but
know that.
other people don't seem to know
Yeah,
that. And I'm like, that those two worlds make complete
they
sense to
do.
me. But when you hear things from the outside, especially if you're younger, impressionable, whatever, um, you perceive that as what do you mean? It's a conflict. It makes sense to me, and then
No,
not to other
you know,
people. But
Chris, you're the both
yeah,
end that I was talking about. You can be
yeah,
a very accomplished business person, earning your living,
yeah,
doing the finance side. And by
mm-hmm,
golly, as a musician, you're very fortunate that you can do that because a lot of them
yeah,
wish they could. But
yeah,
the musical side is also a big part, a big dimension of who you are. And by the way,
mm-hmm,
if you were to subvert that and not honor that musical talent and that musical
yes,
need, it is a
mm-hmm,
true magnet, or as one I put it in the book, it's a vitamin for your soul. One of our clients up in the Pacific Northwest used that phrase years ago. He said, "Sharon, it's a vitamin for your soul, your interest."
sure,
It absolutely is. And
sure,
true story, there was
yeah.
some years back, one of our Georgia uh, consultants had flown in to have lunch, and we were talking about a client she was working with who was, and he has an entrepreneur. He had a business that was skyrocketing and just creating a whole lot of economic value and growing fast,
Mm-hmm.
but it was almost about to burn him out. And so she said, I see that you have really strong musical interests. Talk to me about that. And he said, oh, well, I used to have a ball playing with my band, but now I just don't have any time for that. And he was a young
Mm-hmm.
dad, and, he was feeling that burnout danger.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, you know what? I'm going to challenge that statement. I want you to do an experiment for me. For the next 6 months, she said, can you bring your band back together? Are they still around? And he said, oh yeah, we could just have fun and play in the garage if we want, and have
Yeah.
fun. And
Mm-hmm.
she said, here's the prescription. I want you to at least, ideally once a week if you could, get
Right.
together and play with your band for an hour or two. And I
Mm-hmm.
want you to see how you do with your stress and how the company does if it's still okay. Of course, it was okay. And when at the end of
Yes.
the 6 months, not only that, he was in a much better state mentally and in every way,
Sure.
with a better leader, a better dad,
Mm-hmm.
and a more
Mm-hmm.
fulfilled person because that's all it took. That little booster
Right.
of an hour or two a week of music to build his
Mm-hmm.
batteries back up again and make him a better leader, a better,
Right.
better entrepreneur. And so
Right.
it proved the point. Now, another factoid that has nothing to do with that, but might be interesting for you, is that we don't know why, but our Birkman certified professionals, there's thousands of them. As a group,
Yes.
the average of every interest trait that we measure would always go to the standard deviation. So if it's 1 to 99, it'd be 50, right smack in the middle, right bell curve average.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that said, interestingly enough, our BCPs have higher musical interest than they are 62.5%, not 50. Now, we don't know exactly what that means, but I just thought that's interesting because I have a musical background too. So I thought that was
Oh,
fun to hear. It doesn't mean you
yeah.
need to have it to be a good Berkman professional, but it's interesting
Right.
that it does happen that way. There's
Mm-hmm.
some kind of correlation with the brain that maybe we haven't even discovered yet. But it's kind of, I
Right.
thought, since you have musical, you might be interested to know that.
Yeah, and here's an interesting fact because as I mentioned, I do there are certain things that have happened throughout my life that have been very impactful.
Hmm.
The Berkman being one, reading Dr. Carol Dweck's Mindset,
Yeah,
also very
yeah,
impactful. Things I did in my 40s that I'm like, oh, why did I get to do this sooner? Like if I'd read Mindset at, I don't know, 18, how would that have been? When I took my Berkman, what was really fantastic about getting the 97 musical
hmm,
with the 97 numerical was this. At the time, I was not being musical
hmm,
and I wasn't in, let's say, the best place,
hmm.
right? And I think it was, I will tell you for a fact, it was because that part of me was being
That's
suppressed.
it.
So
Like,
it's
like the
interesting that
example
you,
I gave. Yeah, he was really
yeah,
struggling because he wasn't allowing himself to do something that
right,
birth gave him that itch.
exactly.
He needed
Sure,
he needed the opportunity to exercise that part. Be
right,
like tying one hand behind your back, not
right,
using it.
right. And so doing this in 2014, I started my latest band in 2017.
Uh-huh.
So I because again it's almost the awareness, like it's in black and white.
Yeah.
Like it's telling you, and I was able to see other things coming out on my Berkman that were making sense. And sure enough, I've just since 2017 I've just kept my projects going because and if I understand correctly, right? Because I know that there's some misunderstandings and misconceptions I have about the Berkman, which is why I'm so thankful you're here. Um, it's that the gear or sort of the objective is to put you in that place where you've got your gifts that you're born with, as you mentioned.
Hmm.
That's where you should be operating. I don't like to say should, but this is what you came with, and that is your gift. It would be best for everyone to be operating
Oh,
with that. Would
absolutely,
you agree?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if we have 10 big areas of interest that we measure, nobody's going
Yes.
to be liking and strong in all 10. But we do
Right.
encourage from students, and you mentioned that a while ago. I'm passionate about doing everything we can to help young people from high school and
Right.
college on up.
Agreed. Yes.
Not to tell them what to do, but to give them
Right.
clues about what's going to bring them the most joy and fulfillment. Just
Hmm.
based on how they show up on the questionnaire,
Right.
because that's going to at least guide them in a direction that hopefully will speed up their ability to choose a college major, and then once they're
Right.
out, pick a career path, and then even when they're on the
Hmm.
career path like you were, say, you know what?
Hmm.
Don't be fooled if you include music somehow in your life.
Right.
Doesn't have to be how you earn your paycheck. In fact, probably have more fun if it isn't your paycheck.
It's
Because you've
true
got
that that
other
is
talents.
said.
Yeah,
Hmm.
you don't have to
Hmm.
worry. You can just enjoy it because it brings you joy. It lights you up. It illuminates
Yeah.
you. And
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
that's something you were born to have in your life. And we
Right.
want everyone to experience that kind of awareness and honor those
Hmm.
needs, we call them. It's a motivational need. It's a magnet that
Right.
really pulls you.
Right. I mean, like I said, I refer back to it quite a bit. Um, let's talk a little bit about your book now. Your dad was Mr. Berkman, and
Hmm.
you've continued in with his legacy. Um, and I'm so glad that that has happened because, like I said, I'm such a believer. But what was the shift, or what was the moment where you said this needs to be put into a book? Like, what was it that happened?
Okay. Well, my first book, which I'm getting ready to update, I'm in the process of updating
Okay.
that. It was released in
Hmm.
2013, and I partnered.
Okay.
It was commissioned by Josie Bass, a division of Wiley Publishing, and
Okay.
they wanted a book about the Birkman Method, and so it's called
Okay.
The Birkman Method: Your Personality at
Yes.
Work.
Yes.
But
Yes.
then, a couple of years later, we decided that we wanted to do some significant updating of the graphics on the Berkman, and even just some of the terminology to try to make it more accessible to the way people talked in 20, let's see, 2016. That's when it went live. Okay. So
Okay.
so now what happened is some of the things of just some of the labels, not the stories, they're still fine, but some of the labels have changed names. So I'm in the process of updating that. Now fast forward
Okay.
in our business development department, they said
Mhm.
Forbes would like to talk to you about a book that would where position you as a thought leader, because by this was 2017. By that time, podcasts, we were doing some virtual. All certification training was still in person, but
Okay.
a lot was happening online by that time.
Mhm.
And they said,
Right.
and I thought to myself, well, I met with them in Charleston, South Carolina. I said, I I'm only a thought leader on the Birkman Method, but how do I
Right.
put that into a book that's not overtly just pushing the Berkman Method again, like the first book did?
Mhm.
With
Okay.
unabashed. This is the Berkman
Ah,
Method. Here's some great stories about it. Here's what it is. End of story.
right.
And it was that's it was very obvious. Now they said,
Mhm.
okay, be a thought leader on some topic, some thinking. And around at that time, I had read that UK had for the first time ever appointed a minister of loneliness, and they thought that the cause was social media. And they in London, the Parliament had for the first time was trying to address it by appointing a minister of loneliness to say
Wow.
we see a big problem here. And at the time, much of it was thought to be maybe it's the elderly, but then they realized no, it's young people too. Okay,
Mhm. Mhm.
I get the book done in 2018. It goes live. It's supposed to go live in New York City, and I started working on it in 18, finished it in 19 because I'm working full time. So, but then my
Yeah.
topic was that that vital need we all have to relate to others and be connected
Yes.
on the human level. All right, now
Mhm.
you know what's coming.
Mhm.
My book
Yes.
came out in New York City on March the 10th, 2020. 2020, the day New York had just gone into lockdown, literally,
Right.
literally. And
Yes.
I have a picture of it. They said, "Oh, we're going to put it up on the screen in Times Square." And I went, "Oh, that's fun." Now fast forward, it's all done now. And you've never seen Times Square look so empty. It was forsaken. But now I'm thinking,
Yeah.
okay, here we are in this unknown territory called a global pandemic. And
Right.
what I realized though is we kept trudging through that, what I call that dark tunnel of having to learn to not be with people for 18 months. We were in a massive shutdown all over the world.
Mhm.
And everyone
Mhm.
is kind of in a state of shock. We all know that.
Yes.
I
Mhm.
don't think we'll ever
Mhm.
forget it. We're worried about our
No.
kids. We're worried about school. We're worried about dying from COVID,
Mhm.
all the above. But I also felt more than ever the topic was an urgent topic. And if COVID did anything for us, it just was tangible, visible proof that we humans are created to be together and work together
Yes.
and live together
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
hopefully do it as peaceably and appreciatively as we humanly possibly can. Now we're working on
Yes.
that. We know we've got a ways
Mhm.
to go, but we can't
Mhm.
stop. We can't stop saying that that's important. And so the
Yeah.
book, actually, the back of the book says human connection. And you have to know this was all written pre-COVID. Had no idea.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but I do know this, that it continues. The thing that we hear the most when we go out to other companies of any size in any industry is when you ask them, what's your biggest problem with your team or your people or whatever? They always say,
Yeah.
communication. Well, you know what? That's understandable. And here's why.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
even for our own selves, it's very hard without help. It's like me trying to see the back of my head without being able to grab a mirror and turn around when I brush my
Right.
hair. I need help. I would hope that the Berkman could be that mirror to say it's reflecting back the essence of who you were truly created to be. And that's our goal. And to say that in a loving, positive way. And by the way,
Mhm.
because we are all human, we're all going to have strengths and we're all going to have days of stress. And when it shows
Right.
up, treat it like
Mhm.
the warning light on your car dashboard. When you see that light come on and said, check engine, check
Yeah.
tire pressure, we pull over and we take
Right.
care of it. We need to do the same thing for ourselves. When we're having those
Yeah.
difficult days, okay, what does my Berkman say about how I manage myself
Right.
to ease back into that? Maybe I just need rest. Maybe I just need time
Yeah.
alone. Maybe I
Right.
need music. What is it on? Because the Berkman will tell you how you manage that
Yeah.
stress. And the goal is to minimize. We're never going to get rid of it entirely because it's just life.
Right.
It's called life. It's just life
Yeah.
happens. And we're all good.
Yeah.
But, I also believe it's from those difficult days that we can learn and we can be taught some really important things that we benefit by knowing.
hmm Yeah, absolutely. I mean, would you agree that I'm not sure if you already made this statement, but the Berkman is neither, it's not right or wrong. It's just how you are.
Absolutely. It is. It just is what it is. There is, in other words,
hmm
and we don't like it to even be called a test, Chris, because a test sounds like you can pass or fail it. And of course, naturally,
Great
as a
point.
youngster coming into a new job, 3 days in,
Yeah.
doing, a team, and you just taken the Berkman, and you really don't know what's it going to say. Am I going to agree with it? Is it going to be
Yeah.
judgmental? No, the
Right.
Berkman there is no better or worse way to be. There is no
Right.
possibility of failing. No, there is
Right.
no wrong or right with the Berkman. The
Right.
Berkman is just trying to be a reflection of the strong motivations and gifts that you were born to have, and how do we manage those gifts in a more effective way? Because the goal
hmm
is always to be the best version we can of ourselves,
Right.
not to change dramatically,
hmm
not to change the
Right.
essence, just to change some of the behaviors that might not be working for us so well. Because maybe we mistakenly feel we
Yeah.
ought to, the shoulds and the oughts.
Yeah.
Maybe not,
That's
maybe
and
not. Maybe we just need to
mhm.
look differently at that data.
Yeah, and I mean that's exactly where I was going with it not being right or wrong, because I think even within our belief systems in the way that we're raised,
Hmm.
or why I personally, now that I know that it's used for students, would really think it's important is to use, is because we can be raised or we can be conditioned with a lot of shoulds
Hmm.
and ought tos, just like you said. And taking the Berkman, not the test,
Hmm.
the
The
assessment,
assessment, we call it. Yep. Or
the
yeah.
assessment,
Hmm.
hmm to explain things about you that are not right or wrong. I mean, I think that's very powerful.
Hmm.
I think it's really, really important. We live in a world of shoulds, and I keep these words up here. Instead of saying should, it would be better.
Yeah.
Just to move away from things that we can be conditioned to think or even believe about ourselves, that can literally
Yeah.
dictate the choices that we make versus going with our gifts. I would say I always knew what my gifts were, but again, I think we can suppress things because we think we're supposed to be doing
Yes,
something.
that
And
that sense of what we're supposed to be doing as opposed to
yes,
who we embracing who we really were created to be. The original
yeah,
name for the Birkman Method was it
yes,
was the word a test of social comprehension, and
gotcha.
and I thought many years later the synonym for the word to comprehend is to understand, and to
Right.
understand in an appreciative way is to show love. And my dad,
hmm
toward the end of his life when he was being interviewed, he said, really, for me, what the Berkman is all about, what it's really meant to be, is how do we do a better
Yeah.
job of loving ourselves and loving others.
Yes.
That's the
Yes.
goal.
And going back to when I took it, or when I did it rather,
Uh-huh.
having been on the job for 3 days, I saw how the questions were going, and then I was like, how is this going to be used? Like, who's going to get this information? And ultimately, I was working with a really great team. I really was, and I could appreciate why my CEO wanted his executive team doing this, and it did prove to be very effective. clearly over 10 years later, I'm using it, but I do want to take it again. And I'll do it in Spanish too, because I'm Spanish speaking also.
Okay.
I would love to see,
Well, actually,
because I do.
let's do this
Yeah.
first. Before you take it again, or decide to
Yeah.
take it again, we can
Yeah.
send you the signature report just so you can see the differences in your. But hang on to your preview report because
Oh my
it's
gosh.
got things in it. You're not going to part with it, are you?
No, I guard it with, and I could have sworn I had the digital version of it, and I don't know where it is, but it's literally like one of those things that it's like a memento from my grandmother, like
Uh,
I guard it because I go back to it so often, and I'm like, oh, it's on my Berkman, it's on my Berkman,
um,
and it's so important for me, really, even things like I see on, I'm just going to go to something real quickly that I was looking at earlier about like my delegative nature,
uh-huh,
which is very true,
uh-huh.
because I'm very trusting until I'm not. But oh gosh, where's that the group lifestyle grid? You're still using that,
Yep, but
right?
we're calling it the Birkman map now. It's
Got
the map.
it, got it. I
And it's actually even more colorful because there's gradients of color. The further out you are on the edge, the darker the blue or yellow or green, and the
Oh
more you move toward the
really?
center, the more it becomes a little paler because you're picking up the other colors. So you'll see when we.
Oh my gosh, I'm really looking forward to that. But there are so many because I did take this early in I had just become a CFO,
Mm-hmm.
right? Clearly now I've been doing that for over 10 years
Right.
in that type of a leadership role. So even in like my delegative management style, like as a senior person, like that was kind of like frowned upon, and I'm like, no, I got people to do stuff and I trust them and I know they're going to do a good job, and why do I have to micromanage and whatever. So there were a lot of things about my style, and again, looking at it with eyes of it's not right or wrong
Mm-hmm.
was very helpful, right? Because just because I'm delegative doesn't mean I'm irresponsible, right? It's just I have a way of
It
doing
means you
things,
don't
and I feel like
micromanage.
I'm very right.
Yeah.
Well, but on the same token, I invest heavily in training my people.
Mhm.
I don't just I'm not just like
That's the key.
give rope. Yeah, I don't just give rope and let you hang yourself. Like I let you be just dangerous enough,
Mhm.
but I'm not gonna let you fall flat on your face. So I just feel people do better when you just give them autonomy. That it's just I feel like if people don't have autonomy, they can't build confidence.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like the more experience you have in making decisions, the better you get over time. And the better you get over time, the more confident you become. And I just that's just my style. And
Yeah.
again, and not right or wrong.
No,
Not right or wrong.
and you just said something really important. That's why
Mm-hmm.
people ever ask us, do
Mm-hmm.
you, what does, you have all this data, Sharon. We keep our data, by the way, and we keep it because
Okay.
that's how we can gauge quality, make sure it's still tracking properly. That's how we can do research. It's anonymized, but it enables us to do the research we have to do to be the Birkman method. But that
Right.
said, it's there is no one style of leader. It depends on the context. It depends on
Right.
what is that leader needed to do and what kind of company is it, what kind of industry. And so there's
Sure.
not one size fits all in leadership.
Sure.
The other
Yeah.
caveat to that is that, people have free will in the end. And so we can say from a Berkman, they're likely to gravitate to these kinds of responsibilities. And this is the kind of
Right.
leader you can probably expect in terms of their strengths. That's pretty easy to see.
Right.
Down the road, if you promote them, if you career path them accidentally, with the best of intentions, I would add, to the wrong seat on the bus, as Colin said,
Right.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
put them
Mm-hmm.
in the wrong role, you
Mm-hmm.
unwittingly have set them up for failure. And
Right.
sometimes the failure can also, I've learned this lesson a few times, if you promote them over to the wrong level, they may struggle. So there's all of these
Right.
factors that make the complexity of, the human condition and leadership much more nuanced than people may realize. Because
Right.
but at the same time,
Right.
now Berkman can give you some amazing insights into at least how you can coach them, what you can expect from them, and how you can
Right.
hopefully, with the kind of coaching that we would hope to train to, and what it sounds like you had, um, serve the needs very, very nicely of the company over time. And then if they do hit some conflicts, then we can talk about it and try to get them resolved.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Can I touch on another thing? So the lifestyle grid,
Uh-huh.
where it talks
Where you say
about,
on the Birkman map, yeah, that you are here
okay,
map.
whew, I'm gonna need to get it with, because I know that I've heard you mention that you don't want to change it a whole lot, right? That you want to stay as pure to its original format
Well,
on the
the
Berkman.
lifestyle grid was used for about 35 or 40 years, a long time.
Right,
Now we've had the
right.
Birkman map since 2016. So it's still now
Okay.
almost 10 years with that. So we don't make changes easily.
Right, right. I've heard you mention that you changed what was it that I mechanical to technical?
Yes, we did because nowadays in the professional levels, mechanical is seen as just literally machinery, and technology is every company
Mm,
now. So we changed
gotcha.
mechanical to technical, and we changed clerical to
Right.
administrative. But frankly, it's measuring the exact same thing. And so the
Gotcha.
measurements didn't change, just the labeling to be more current with what businesses expect in today's world.
Right. Right. I have a personal question for you.
Sure,
May I?
of course,
Okay.
you can
Um,
thing at all.
at this point, I run my own practice, and a lot of the focus is on um, buy sell transactions of businesses.
Hmm.
And I see a lot of businesses that people have built always with the hopes of their children taking over.
Hmm.
And I know what I'm seeing a lot, especially I'm seeing a lot of boomers wanting to sell their businesses with children not at all interested.
Hmm.
So they're like, I have this profession, I have that profession. I really don't feel like running your business. Sell it, right? What made you so passionate about this that you said, I have to keep this alive and keep it going? What was it?
Well, I think that for me, midlife, I saw my parents getting older, and I had one
Okay.
sister only, and she was out in California, and we were here in
Okay.
Houston. I saw my dad starting to struggle with the succession plan, and he
Okay.
brought in several. It happened to be guys, and at the end of the day, I saw that he wasn't totally thrilled with how things were working out. And so finally, at one point, my youngest by that time had just started third grade. So she was at school all day. You have to realize that I grew up when my parents were the struggling young entrepreneurs. They didn't use that term
Mm-hmm.
back in the day, but that's what they were.
Right.
And I saw how much that was their mission, their passion in life, and how
Mm-hmm.
vitally important it was to both of them. And my mom was very, very much a believer in what dad was doing. So
Right.
that was the ambiance of my childhood, and that was in my soul too. And so
Yeah.
I would go in and I would help with training, and I would do what we call now a Berkman conversation. That time we called it a Berkman feedback or debrief. I could do that because
Okay.
I understood the instrument, because it was household talk. It was dinner table talk, you know. So I knew that part. What I didn't know was or care about, because I was on a music track, got a master's degree in music theater and opera production. Yeah, thinking now I was going to go
Uh-huh.
that way. Like most kids, I don't want to do what my parents do. I mean, I'm a teenager. I want to do my own thing, right? But by
Right.
that point, I was in my late 40s and
Right.
my mid late 40s, and and I thought, golly, this really does matter, and I do deeply
Right.
care about it. So I brazenly go to my dad, and when I saw him about to once again make a choice that I was a little dubious about, and I said, well, Dad, how about me now? And he said, oh, well, what about your music? And went, well, I'm married to an international opera singer. He's singing all over the world. I get music through my spouse. Um,
Sure.
I've done that. I feel like I scratched that itch. I'm comfortable, and I really
Right.
value what you and Mom had built up, and I'd like to have a go at it. And he said, oh, okay, well, I'll talk to your mother tonight. So sure enough, he comes back the next day and he said, well, we talked about it and we think that would be a good idea. So now I'm thinking, oh, okay, I better start learning about business now. But I had been hanging out at the office during the day while my
Right.
youngest was at school, and I had been
Okay.
listening and learning a whole lot, just by over more than 5 years, actually it's 7 altogether, by just being there and learning from everybody else about how the business was run. And so at that point, it was a good time to just put a stake in the ground and say, okay, now I'm going to learn. And if nothing else, Chris, I wanted to know that if I thought that turning it over to another entity or selling was the right, best way to go, that I would know enough to make a good decision on their behalf.
Right.
Yeah, because I knew in their 80s they're not going to live forever, and they were
Yeah.
they were already. Golly, um, Dad was 80, in his mid 80s, and my mom was in her early 80s, that 3 years apart. And so
Yeah.
I thought, golly, I better hurry up and start getting proficient in business now. And then I
Right.
found the more I did it, the more I felt at home and felt like that
Right.
was probably a truer calling for me, even than the music was fun and I loved it, but Berkman felt
Yeah.
right. It felt like this is
Right.
actually what I was meant to do from the get-go. I just had to grow into it. So here I am.
That's
Here I am, 27 years later, still here.
wow. That's beautiful. I did not know that at all. I don't know if you've mentioned that on a different interview or if it's in your book because I
It's
have not
it's
read
it's
that
somewhat
book.
in the book too. You'll see a reference to that.
That is beautiful and wow, what a way to honor
Well, like
both your
I do call
parents.
myself a poster child for a second career, because now people are living so long, you don't have to be
Yes.
sticking with just one career for your entire life.
Right.
And but
Agreed.
I think for me it was also, it just felt right, at that moment
Yes.
in time. It felt like it was something
Mhm.
that was so important to every fiber of my being, that somehow,
Mhm.
I didn't know how, but I was bold and audacious enough to say, I'm going to try. I'm going to give this a go. And then I
Yeah.
thought, yeah, this is really exciting. Because, and at a deepest level, as much as I love the music, and found it was fulfilling in so many ways, because it's,
Yeah.
one of my top, like you, one of my top two
Mhm.
interests.
Right.
I I have to say that when I lay my head on the pillow at night, nothing makes me happier than getting to hear someone say what you said at the beginning of our conversation. That it was meaningful, that it was helpful. Golly,
Yeah.
there's no words in the English language or Spanish or any other language that could make me more
Right.
happy than hearing that.
Oh, I'm so glad I could have said that to you personally, um,
I wish
because
too. Then I would have give you a hug.
oh, virtual hug, heart to heart.
Yeah.
Um, you know, your story is interesting, and I'll share a little bit of why. Like I said, it's been finance and music for me, and I came up with the concept of this podcast 4 months, 5 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, I already shared my age with you. Again, no different than you, right? Like there's just like this turning point of, I guess at this point where my heart leads
Mm-hmm.
me, and as I mentioned, I've just had, I wouldn't, I don't know if it's called luck, but I've had the nudges that I've needed to the little pushes to nudge me to where my heart is,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I, when I talk to my clients or I talk to prospects or whatever, I always say the same thing. At this point, I'm seeking clients that elevate my soul, because that's just where I'm at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So how and why, having the background I have, wanting to do a podcast about living your best life, maybe something that doesn't kind of make sense to some people, but going back to things like the Berkman, having great mentors, having people that have genuinely cared and wanted to see
Mm-hmm.
me become the best version of myself, which I'm can confidently say, at this age, I am the best version of myself, but I 1,000% can attest to the fact that it's because I've had tools like the Birkman and the right people in my life to put me on the right seat on the bus.
Yeah, that's right. No, I think
So I'm at that pivotal
it's the
point
best
too.
testimony. That's the outcome we hope for with everybody
Yeah.
that takes the Birkman, that they would have that realization, because that's where the magic happens. And by the way, we really value the people that come and get certified, because they're carrying that message out into the field. Somebody had to
Yeah.
authorize those questionnaires for your team, and somebody had to facilitate. And it's really
Yeah.
important. We keep the engine going here. We provide the data, but we also stress how important it is for people to be able to coach and have those life-changing conversations in a meaningful way, so that the data makes sense to them, and it's not just
Yeah.
random numbers and colors on a page.
Yeah. Um, so is this a tool that can be used by anyone, or does it, for those watching or listening to the podcast, right, that know nothing about the Berkman, this is the first time they hear of it, right? If they're interested in taking this assessment, can they go on your website
Yes,
and do this?
they can. In fact,
You
my
were,
assistant's here.
Nice to
You need
meet
to, yeah,
you.
you
I
need to
read
meet
the
Emily
email.
anyway.
yeah, I'll go ahead. So what I was gonna say is you can go to Birkman.com/connect, and we'll get you in touch with someone here at Birkman.
Right.
And right now we're running an insights campaign where you can take the questionnaire and it will send you the colors of your usual behavior, your needs, and your interests. And so it gives you just a very extremely, not even your placement on the map, just the colors. And they can experience the Birkman from there. And then to get the deeper insight that we discussed today, they would reach out to us, and then we can go from there and get the other insights, as well as the map and then the components.
Right.
The thing that's interesting, I think, for me about Birkman is that if you just look at our website and somebody said, oh, well, you work with teams, you do coaching, you do hiring, they're not sure how we're any different from any other assessment out there. And there's many of them, Chris. I mean,
There are.
and Strengths Finders and a 1,000 others. And so there's so many to choose from. It's a little overwhelming for the average person. Birkman, I think, captured something that Dad would say it's of a spiritual nature, about what really is the flame inside people that makes them special. But you have to experience it. When you walked in the door and knew nothing about it, there was understandable anxiety. Like, wait a minute, I just got here. What is it?
These questions are a little personal.
Right, this is very personal. Even with those simple questions. And, people always say, how did you get that information from those simple questions? That's our secret. That's our magic secret, our secret sauce. But what we've learned over time is that if we can just get the people to take the time to fill in a 30-minute or so assessment, then we can capture enough to show them the power, and they have to kind of experience it with face validity. When you got to the point where you went, oh, wow, yeah, that really does capture something that's important about me, then you were in the circle. We've been able to capture your imagination at that point. But if you just read about it, it's like, oh yeah, I have bought the Strengths Finder book. I have Enneagram, whatever it is. And that they're not bad. But what I would say is what they're measuring is what Birkman calls our usual behavior. And that's okay. But wait. There's a lot more there that needs to be seen and understood that's not being captured with just usual. There's the career side where interests come into play, and that synthesizes in the Birkman between the interpersonal and the career side, or between, I would say, occupational and relational at the same time. At the same time, because guess what? We take our whole selves to work, don't we? We don't leave part of ourselves at the door and try. We may try, but we don't. we we
Yeah.
we are who we are, and that's
Yeah.
okay. We just want people to be the best side of their strengths and not in their stress side.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you shared at the very beginning that, there were some things that could be perhaps misunderstood or misinterpreted because, I did this over 10 years ago.
Hmm.
So I've led with those perhaps misconceptions. So I'm glad that you cleared that up to understand that it's not as
Well,
straightforward. You should really understand
yeah.
it.
And let me ask you a
Yeah.
question. All those years
Yeah.
ago, do you recall you said the team got together and they looked at the
Yes.
Berkmans. But did you
Yes,
ever have a one-on-one private conversation on your Berkman? Good.
I did.
Because that's a
I did.
requirement. You were supposed to.
Yeah, and that's why I was asking about can you just go on the website and do it because
Not
I,
with,
I would
not the
agree
whole Berkman.
that
Yeah.
yeah, I would agree that the guidance needs to be
Yeah.
there. I will also say that I really appreciate that you just shared the spiritual aspects of that, because you do talk about you're born with your gifts, and
Yeah.
this is what you're meant to do, and this, a good way to guide yourself through life is, with that fire in your belly. I think that's so important. So I'm glad you mentioned that too, and that was kind of the spirit of your dad and the
Yeah,
torch
he
that you're
was.
carrying,
It
correct?
was, yeah. He
Yeah.
was actually on track to become a Lutheran pastor before the war, and came back
Oh,
and decided that his true calling, his true ministry, if you will, was to help people with social
yeah.
psychology. And so
That's
that was the core of his. He never wavered, not one iota on
yeah.
that until his last breath at 94.
Yeah.
And he was lucid, right to the end. So that was a gift.
Yeah.
Uh, I know your
Yeah.
time is probably just about up, but I'm gonna,
Take your time.
yeah,
Take your
I'm
time.
gonna.
Hmm.
It's probably backwards. Creatures of Contact is the name of the book,
Uh-huh.
and the
Yeah.
subtitle is Why You Need More Than a Personality Test. Now, the reason I say that is because,
Uh-huh.
rightfully so, most people will call Berkman a personality test. My father would
Right.
say no, it's a
Okay.
motivational assessment. It's about
Okay.
what lights you up, what motivates you, not a test of what you could pass or fail. And also,
Yes.
it's a way to really understand how the important perceptions, and the word perception comes from seeing, literally, how do you see self and others? And he felt like
Right.
if you can have a more accurate understanding of the power of perceptions, then you can be, again, it enables you to get to that level of better self understanding and better appreciation of the gifts of the people you live and work with. So,
That's
yeah.
amazing.
And Creatures of Contact, literally just last week, came out as an audio book as well. We
Ama-
just recorded it this year, um, but now uh, we're getting ready to run off some paperback. This is a dust jacket one that I did with Forbes, and it's
Beautiful.
there's some copies still available, but eventually they're going to run out. So we're about
Okay.
to look into a paperback version. And if
Yeah.
you would be, I know you're super busy, but you would be a lovely candidate to get Berkman certified if you ever decide to go in that direction and add that to your
Well,
practice.
yes. I mean, I'm definitely considering it, especially after this conversation. I think that last piece that you shared about spirituality kind of said, "Okay, Chris, this is right up your alley." Talking about when you get to this stage in your life
Hmm.
and you're starting maybe to reconsider. I really feel that my life is going in that direction anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
And
but your
especially
last statement,
if you feel a calling for students, that's
I do.
another avenue in addition, not instead of the company or the business side, but as an
Yeah.
addition, an addendum to it,
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
you could help in that because there's such a need for the young people to have some guidance,
Oh.
some affirmation and direction.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, talking about COVID, I do feel I have adult children already out of college and working in their professions.
Mm.
And I feel that, emotionally, spiritually, there were some setbacks with COVID
Yeah,
in
no
terms of
question. It was hard on the
their
kids.
socialization. And I do think that going back to the blessings I've had in my life, to see that with my children, I think that even this is where all of this is coming from,
Yeah.
because I know that they're not alone in that
No.
struggle. And it's what you're saying. It's a calling. Like
Mhm.
I totally feel it. Just pot. I don't know where you tell me a year ago I was going to be doing this. I'd be like, I don't have to. I don't have time for that. Like I'm so limited, but here I am. And it almost feels like it's worked out effortlessly, which goes back to your gifts and what
It
you're
does.
born with and
If it's
what,
working out
you know.
smoothly, I see that as a meant to be. If
Yes,
it's a constant struggle and doors keep closing, that might be a hint that we should go in a different
right.
direction. maybe
Yeah.
maybe we're trying to learn something from the denial there. But I think
Yeah, for sure. Does that
meant to
have
be
anything
worked
to
out.
do with the 75 social service?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It does.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, yes. Yes. That's way higher than average. Average is only 40 to
Is it?
60. High average is 60, and you're 75, aren't you? Or
Yeah, I'm
yes,
75 on social.
75.
It's literally after musical and numerical, which
Uh-huh.
really makes sense because I used to run a lot of, typically even as like fresh out of college, running the charitable events and coordinating things
Yeah.
at literally every workplace I went to, and coming up with these
Yeah, well, we tell
like,
people, Chris, I'm looking at the signature report summary, but your top four interests, and especially the top three, you look at the strongest
yeah,
numbers, those are the things that need to be first in your life.
right,
Simple as
yeah,
that. And the
right.
ones at the bottom, you can delegate to other people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's okay,
That
because they were born to do that. But, none of us are born to do everything.
Right. And you've mentioned that a lot. I've seen that in your
Mhm.
other interviews and that's I think that's a driving message as well, is that we're all meant to complement each other as well, because we're not all going to be good at everything.
Right. I heard something interesting just the other day, and that was that I was from an African American friend of mine who's very, very wise, and she said she heard a lecture about the difference between independent and interdependent. And she said because the African American culture, the black culture, has that such deep roots in centuries of slavery that
Hmm.
they never felt independent was never an option, but interdependent
Okay.
is what made them able to survive. And the fact of the matter is that's not unique to them. We're really not we the American, oh, the independent thinker. No, really we all are connected and we all affect each other. And
Right.
we're actually, I think, created as a species to be interdependent, but somehow we have to figure out how to not fight with each other in our interdependencies.
Right.
We can disagree on things, but we don't need to be
Sure.
killing each other, and we don't need to be
Right.
fighting all the time and feeling frustrated all the time. And the
Yes.
goal, again, of what we're trying to do with the Birkman awareness and the Birkman data is to say, how can we make that a smoother path of understanding one another? And hopefully, that's not always going to be, doesn't have to be perfect all the time. We don't have to be happy
No.
all the time, but we want to be
Right.
happy most of the time. And
Right.
we want to know our purpose and we want to feel fulfilled.
Yes.
And when
Yes.
we take our last breath, we want to think, hey, I did a darn good job.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I think it's such a beautiful thing how you've taken the reins here and honored your
Thank
family.
you.
I think I would have been very saddened and disappointed to hear that there wouldn't be continuity, um, a succession to this, because it's so effective, I
Yeah.
think.
Well,
It's
what
so
I'm striving for in my own succession plan, which, now I'm grandmother of five, and I
lucky you.
yes, I am so lucky, and they live nearby, even luckier. It's the
Yes.
joys of my life, but I also know I'm mortal, and I'm not going to be able to do this forever.
Mm,
So I'm looking really
right.
hard to make sure that I find the right people to keep following
Yes.
in this path that is so important to me, and it was so important to my parents as the founders. And
Definitely.
I've got a good team in place, and that's my goal.
One,
We're going to keep this going as long as we possibly
yeah.
can.
That's wonderful. I think as long as you all stay focused on the North Star, that should map out beautifully.
I think so.
This is very helpful,
Mhm.
very helpful and very good for
Well,
people.
it's been an
Um,
absolute delight and joy to speak with you and get to know you and to hear your
you,
story. Thank
thank you. I
you.
am again so blessed to have had you on my podcast. I had hoped but didn't know. I mean, we're a new podcast. It's it's a startup,
Mhm.
and to have people, I would say, especially in the first season when there were no episodes, people saying, it's okay that you don't have episodes out yet. I'm a big believer in yet. We connect with your mission, and I'm like, that's
Uh,
what it's about.
oh,
That's what
that's
it's
lovely.
about.
Well, and you're a wonderful interviewer, Chris. Um,
Oh,
so
thank
thank you
you.
for reaching out. It was my pleasure
Thank you so
to meet
much.
you this afternoon.
Thanks for your interest in sticking around to watch or listen to my podcast, dedicated to providing tools and resources to help you claim and live your best life. If you're loving these conversations, make sure you hit that bell to subscribe or follow and never miss an episode of the Chris Senise Podcast. Don't forget to tap the like and share it with someone who needs a little inspiration today. Let's grow this community of curious, driven minds together.